Channel 26. I'm also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez, along with our producer, Aldi Wani. Our very special guest today is former Valley legendary and New Mexico Highlands legendary basketball player, Ben Santistevan. But, Ben, I always say a legendary person that's also given back so much to education. And we've known each other for very many years and are still very good friends. And it's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, Ed. I really enjoyed Sunday. We had a good time with Ron and Arnold and George and Kenny, and Sandy came in, and it was great to see you guys and all my childhood buddies.
Well, it's George Scott, Kenny Beach, Ronnie Beach, Arnold Senna, and myself. And as old war horses do, we sat around and talked a lot about old war horse basketball stories. And Kenny Beach is older than us. But so I had such respect for Kenny as a player and as a person. All the people we had there have all given back, to the community. Ron lives in Phoenix now, but I had Ron, as you know, on my show just a couple weeks ago. And it's always good to reconnect. Ron and I played in the North-South All-Star game together. You played ball with us on Old School, the team Old School, a couple years ago. You played with Arnold. There's so many stories on 8 Ball. There's so many stories about basketball. But Ben, it's important to know you've been an educator for 30 years. You're a principal at West Mesa at Rio Grande. You taught. I remember when you coached with Joe Coleman at Valley. You were an assistant with Coach Coleman, and I was an official. And you and I, I think you got mad at me one time, and and that's not to say you didn't disagree with calls that I made, but you got actually mad at me one time, and I said to myself later, well, Ben never says anything, so I probably missed that one. And amongst other calls that I missed, and it wasn't on purpose. But you filled a lot of different roles, Ben, and right now, you're still the superintendent of education of CYFD. And before we go into the basketball talk, tell us a little bit about that. You told me a little bit before we got on the show. Tell us all a little bit about what you're doing right now.
Well, Ed, like you said, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've started out here at YDDC, which is a juvenile correctional center for our students and kids that are adjudicated for 1 year, 2 year, or up until they're 21. So we deal with some really tough kids throughout the state of New Mexico. But yeah, I graduated in 1986 from New Mexico Highlands, and my first job was Ray Cordova was the recreation director here, and he said, hey, there's going to be a teacher that's going to be retiring, man, an English teacher, and I know you teach English, so apply for the position. And I did, and I was fortunate enough to get the job, and so it started my career in education. I spent 5 years teaching here at YDDC. I taught at Rio Grande, where I coached with Pete Pino, and we were in the semifinals with Mario Armendariz and Esteban Rodriguez and Thomas Chavez. And then I became a principal and became the principal here at Foothill High School here at YDDC. And then, one of the things that I really felt was that I would have never been able to give the correct advice to these kids if I wasn't able to do some work in the community. So I went to the public school sector, and I was the assistant principal at Ernie Pyle, Harrison, Valley, Rio Grande, and like you said, the principal here at West Mesa. And man, Ed, those years of working with kids and working with parents, there were some tough times, but man, I used to always go to bed at night, with a clear head, knowing that I gave everything I had to assist the kids in being successful and potentially and hopefully giving them an experience that, an educational experience that they'll never forget. And so I always felt like I was always on. I had to be at my best to deal with every single student that came my way and every parent. And I'll tell you, if you weren't on and you didn't give your 100%, the parents would let you know. And so with the kids, kids are very, very adept at reading people.
Yes.
And so, one of my favorite quotes and that I have in my email is kids don't care how much you know, but they do know how much you care. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. And hopefully, a large portion of the kids were able to take some of my advice, use it. And I still get many, many calls from former players. And when I see former students, it's always great to see them. They always tell me what they're doing. And man, I really enjoyed my 30 years yet. I'm still enjoying it now. A little bit different clientele, but I'll tell you what, these kids are really, really sharp. They've been through some really tough times. But again, I want to let them know that there's always hope. There's always success that's out there. It's just a matter of working for it. So, wonderful career, Ed. I'm on my ninth, the 18th, 17th, 18th hole of my career, but it's always enjoyable.
What an impact! You mentioned Coach Armendariz. I had Coach Armendariz on my show last fall or last fall. It might have been winter, and he mentioned you, the impact you had. Coach Dan Bachicha, who's coaching at Cibola Girls, mentioned you, and there's tons of other people, tons of the impact that you had. We remember your career as a basketball player, and it was outstanding. But I still remember seeing your dad at the games with his shirt Santistevan. You and I grew up playing against each other. We didn't play against each other in the parochial league. I played at Holy Ghost. You played at St. Francis, I believe, right?
St. Trees.
St. Trees. And we never faced each other in the parochial league, but we grew up, playing in the same leagues and things like that. But I look at, in Ben, we're going to get to your basketball career here in a bit, but I look at the impact, man, and that impact has been huge, because you mentioned I still remember one memory, and I'm going to say this. Valley had Leo Ural, I think R.T. Gwynn, might have been Alvin Broussard, losing to Hobbs. And what I remember most, it was a shocking loss. Ronald Ross from Hobbs probably hit a shot from the Lobo logo. And I remember watching with Paul Lawson and Jess Martinez, two official friends of mine, and we couldn't believe he made that shot. We couldn't believe he hit that shot. Leo Ural falls down at the end of the game. And I still remember you went over there and picked him up. You went over there and picked him up, man. I remember that. And I remember that. I remember thinking, I love Leo. I love Leo. Leo's a great young man. I love him to death. But I remember in the worst moment of his athletic career, when you lose like that, it's devastating. But you went over there and you were devastated too, Coach. There's no question about it. You hate losing, but you went over there and said, look, let's get up. We're going to live to fight another day, whether it be basketball or life or whatever. That's been the message that I've seen you give to kids for a long, long time. And that's really important. You mentioned about kids knowing how much you care. I work with kids too, and they absolutely can see right through you. Absolutely.
They do. They can, Ed. And, you mentioned my dad, and he's the one that pretty much was a driving force behind, myself and my brothers and sisters. My dad, awesome 20-year firefighter with the city. He was a first paramedic with the city. He went through the first class for paramedics and, worked two jobs. I mean, the guy was a hard worker. He definitely left the work ethic in us. But I'll tell you what, I remember him going to many, many games, Ed, and he'd see our teams. And sometimes, we didn't have a lot of size, but he would look at our team and say, hey, dude, I can't see you guys beating this team from, wherever it was, Manzano, Hobbs, San Diego. He goes, you guys don't have anything bigger than 6'3", 6'4". And I said, Saint, we're going to win. We're going to win. And he used to always critique our game afterwards, pat us on the back, but always tell us, hey, there's always someone else bigger and better out there than you, so you better start working on your game. And so yeah, it was always something that I really enjoyed playing in front of my dad. I enjoyed coaching in front of him. He was going to be honest with me. He was going to be upfront and let me know, where I did well. But he was also going to say, dude, you got to work on these things. And it always carried on. You mentioned Joe Coleman, and I worked with Joe for 8 years. We had a great time together. I always tease him. I said, you know what, dude, when you were young and coming to the Valley Gym and watching us play, you wanted to be just like me. And so when you got the job, you hired me, and I was like, yeah, you're gonna hire me, dude. You don't have a choice. But the beautiful times at Valley, beautiful times at Highlands. And, Ed, more than anything that I've done on the court, the most thing I'm proud of is what my family has done with education, what I've done with my family with education. And I hope we talk a little bit more about that. But, I talk a little bit about my dad, but, one of the greatest stories that I've ever heard happened to me and my mom. My mom is a sixth grade dropout from Nunez, New Mexico. And when she met my dad, she was working at the A&W. And she wanted to work, and she didn't want to go to school. And they ended up marrying, having me and my brothers and sisters. But my mom, my dad made her go back to school. He was like saying, hey, you cannot stay home and do nothing. You got to go back to school. And they fought for a little bit. And my mom went and got her GED the same year I graduated from high school, 1980. And so, fast forward 30 some odd years, Ed, and I'm very proud to say that I have a daughter that graduated from nursing school and is a pediatric nurse in Cincinnati. And I'm very proud to say that my son just graduated with his doctorate in physics from the UC Davis. But more importantly, Ed, my brother and sisters, all of us, we all have graduates from colleges from our kids. My sister Yvonne just graduated, her daughter from with her doctorate in pharmacy. And my brother Chuck, he's got two kids that just graduated with their doctorates in pharmacy. And so in a matter of a couple of months, my mom went from getting her GED in 1980 to having 4 grandkids that are doctors right now. And if you ask me, Ed, I wouldn't change anything I did on the basketball court, where I played, so on and so forth. But what I will not trade in is the push that my dad gave us to be successful in education, and told us that we could be anybody we wanted if we knew how to read and if we excelled in school. So, God, Ed, I wish I could tell you that I was a state champ and, went on to become a national champ at the college level. But I can't say that, but I can say that the family is very, very vested in education, and it's shown. And man, it's just a tribute to my mom and dad who pushed us to the limit with that. So thank you for letting me say that story, man. I appreciate it.
No, you know what, Ben, that's important. We talked about that on Sunday. All our kids that we mentioned at the table are all more successful than us, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Ben, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your career at Valley High School in New Mexico Highlands after these messages on the sports desk. Good job, man. Those are some man. I still remember.
Mitch, there's a line drive right at the shortstop for out number 3.
Apodaca ripped to left field. That will bounce in, so it's going to be extra bases as they'll have to chase that one at the wall in the warning track. Flipped up, there's no play at home. So it's an RBI double for Andrew Apodaca. Runner at third. High leverage spot. Can Chavez keep the tie? No, that's going to be cracked into left field. It's a base hit as Love puts the Sandia Matadors ahead for the first time today.
The 0-2. It's upstairs, goes to the backstop, and the run will not score. Gun down at home.
Chavez rocks and fires. Ahmed, that's going to be an RBI for Ahmed as that one right through the gap in right center. Petrie will scoop that one, and it's looking like a triple as Ahmed plugs into third base, and what a way to score that run for the Matadors.
Coach Romero barking out his orders there to his players. He's been around the game for a long time. Nice shot to center field. That'll bring runners in. Just like that, La Cueva will bring 3 runners in to go up 3-0. Runner advances to third. Shot to center. That looks good. That's gone. Man, outstanding center shot there. As La Cueva will score. Antonio Lucero, second baseman, quite the hitter. Shot to third, and good catch. And she gets the out. Outstanding play by Trinity Bazan. Nice bright spot.
Costly errors allowed Cleveland to get 1 run back. That one sent on the ground to the left side. Throw to first in time. Throw home. Got her! Whoa, what a play!
Next door or something. Not sure, but they came out here, and Ellison cracks an RBI out to left field. That's where you got to do it. 1 run, 2 run, and this game could very well be over. It's a play at the plate. It's sliding, and that will do it. The Rams walk off the La Cueva Bears. It's a 3-run batted in shot by Dean Ellison.
Also streamed on Facebook. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Our very special guest today, legendary Valley and New Mexico Highlands basketball player Ben Santistevan. And Ben, in the first half hour, we talked, first 15 minutes, we talked a lot about your career with CYFD and teaching at West Mesa and Valley. Now we kind of want to talk about your basketball career. You know, you played at Valley, and I want to say this story real quick. You played at Valley and for Phil Ewing, and when you were a junior, you had yourself, Frank Comiskey, and Ray Gabaldon. And there was no 3-point shots then. Now, I'm saying imagine today having those 3 there. Frankie was incredible. Ray was incredible. You're incredible. You imagine having that team together today with 3. You guys scored as it was, 85, 90 a game without 3-point shots. So you imagine having that team together today. And do you ever think about that? Because that was a high-octane team, man.
Yeah, you know what? It was really fun playing that year. I was a point guard, and we ran a 1-3-1 set, and Rainey was on the right, and Frank was on the left. And so there was a lot of times that I would be able to pass to Ray, and Ray would create something and 90% of the time hit. And same thing with Frankie. Those 2 led the city in scoring that year. And then obviously I led the city in assists. you give it to those guys, and they were scoring. But I'll tell you, man, Frankie could hit from way out, and so could Ray. And so if we had a 3-pointer line, we would probably have a little bit more, or average a little bit more. One of the things that I really enjoyed about that team was the fact that we were able to run and gun. We didn't have any. We basically had the green light. It was something that I always really enjoyed, because once I got the ball, I was able to push the ball up the court, and I had 2 really good guys to pass to. And I'll tell you what, man, Ray was he was a tough kid. So was Frank. But I'll tell you what, man, I was one of the guys that did not have a problem passing the ball. I mean, I didn't. It was something that I really enjoyed, and so there was a few times though walking back to the huddle when Ray would say, "Hey, I was open," and then Frank would say, "I was open," and it was like one of those things that like, "Hey, what about me? I was open too," but it was fun. And then just like anything, you start playing some of those summer leagues, and you meet people. And I met Arnold Senna. He was a really good friend of mine, and he said, "Dude, you got to get out here to Highlands, man." And so I walked on to Highlands, and luckily I was able to make the team and played my first year with Leland Abreu, and my last 3 for the legendary coach Henry Sanchez. And man, Henry, both of them were very, very strict coaches that demanded that you give 100%, that you be physically fit. And so I was in the best shape of my life right after high school. And I'll tell you what, I don't regret any of it. Playing for Henry Sanchez was one of the most cerebral things that I'll ever do. I had one of the best coaches in the history of basketball for the state of New Mexico giving me pointers, giving me advice. And it was just incredible. I didn't realize how lucky I was until years later. But I'll tell you what, man, it was just something that I'll never forget. And Coach Sanchez he's gone. I think about him every day. I have his picture up in my house, and I look at him every day. And not only that, but a lot of his knowledge and wisdom is still with me. And there's a lot of times, man, that I look back, and my dad was obviously a huge influence, but when my dad went there and Henry was, he basically had full reign. And I know my dad told him, if you had to take him behind the woodshed, you got my permission. He never had to. I was a great kid. Didn't want to cause any grief, and I would never want to disappoint Henry or my dad. So those were some 2 really good people in my life. And if Arnold went to taking me to NMHU, man.
You're a humble guy. Those are great honors to earn. Darren Sanchez was All-American. Darren played a little bit after you, Henry's son. Darren Sanchez, the great Albuquerque high guard. He was awesome. Some great people you played with, some great talent. Arnold Senna being one of them, a great friend of ours. Tell us what that meant to you to be All-American. After you walked on, you have to look back on it. And you're a humble guy. You are. But it has to mean something. You made All-American. You're in their Hall of Fame. And you're still giving back. Those things are honors you still think about, I'm sure, but you're thinking about the next day. Whose life can I influence today? But what does those honors mean to you as far as being an All-American and being in their Sports Hall of Fame?
Ed, I look back, and I sent you a picture, I think, of the day I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Me and my dad went up there. My whole family went up there for that. And, it was really nice.
There it is.
You
right
get
there.
the award, and you think, hey, man, this is really cool. But later on in life, when all that black hair turns to white, is when you really, really appreciate and know that there was some things that you did that were impressive. And one of the things that my dad always said, he said, you're never going to play basketball unless you can have a 3.0. You're never going to play in any games if you get suspended. So my dad was a very much of a stickler for education. And so when I was named academic All-American for the second year in 1986, was one of the very first times that I saw my dad cry. I saw the emotion in him, and he said, I'm proud of you, and the reason I'm proud of you is that you're able to do two.
You can do it too, and there's a path to get there. How many people are going to go pro, Coach? Not many.
Not
Not
many.
many. We wanted to when we were young. I mean, I dreamed about it. I used to watch the NBA and get all these books, and because of Danny. Danny was a heck of an influence on me. He still
Oh,
is. My
heck
older
yeah.
brother. Yeah, I still look up to him and love him very, very much. He had a real good influence. So did my dad. But I was
Yeah.
lucky to have that influence, like you're lucky. You were lucky to have, your dad. And you mentioned that Ray Cordova. I call him Rugged Ray Cordova because he was older. I had to play against him later, and between him and Mike Webster, it was on inside, and I was more of a forward, but I had to go. I held my own. But those guys were incredible players. I learned a
Yeah.
lot, and Ray and I are still real good friends. We mentioned that Valley connection. I use Roger Cordova for my baseball. He's my color analyst for baseball. He might ask me about a play sometime, and I'll say, Coach, I have no idea. That's why I brought you on. Because he knows every hit and run. If they're, the hit's going the other way, if they're going to pitch out. So you had a strong influence in your Valley community. Now you mentioned Coach Sanchez, which is a big influence. But growing up around those guys, Kenny Beach and Ray Cordova, people you looked up to, Henry Saavedra, who's a great guy. Love Henry. There's so many people that influenced your life.
Yeah, you know what? Roger Cordova and I go back to elementary days. I used to go to recreation at Cochiti Elementary where he
Oh,
was.
wow.
That's where I met Raj, and ultimately when Raj was my best, said, dude, you cannot waste away not playing college ball. You got to go and get this under your belt. And so he was great. Roger was really good. Roger was one of my very first basketball coaches in high school. I played JV as a sophomore. He was a JV coach, and so Raj was, he knows a lot about baseball. There's no doubt about it. But man, Raj was a good basketball coach. He epitomized the coach in the sense that he demanded 100%. He treated you with respect, and he was going to allow you to make mistakes without belittling you or giving you a hard time. Now, when it was only him and I, then he could give you a hard time because he knew a lot and he knew what I could do and he demanded it. And so I look back and sometimes I think, man, those dudes were tough on me, but man, it was worth it. It was something that I look back on now and think I was really, really fortunate to have the friends I did in the Valley, and Ray Gabaldon was another one I hung out with, Dave Lopez, and then Arnold and I were pretty inseparable after we graduated from Highlands, and we were playing in the leagues there, but that you just have connections with that are going to last forever.
They have. Coach, we got to wrap it up. I'll tell you what, it's been a pleasure. Ben Santistevan, the former legendary Valley All-Star, you did make All-City, All-District, All-State. We wanted to mention that in 1980. Also the two-time RMAC All-Academic team. It's been a pleasure, Coach. We appreciate you joining us today on the Sports Desk.
Thank you, Ed. Anytime, man. And I appreciate everything you're doing for the community and giving voice to all the people that might have lost it a little bit along the way. So